Hello and good morning to you on this autumn morning, and welcome to the house. My name is Natalie Kendel. I am pastor here at the house, and I will also be your host for today. In case you're new here, you've joined us on the official YouTube channel of the house. The house is an online faith community where we share stories, music, prayer, social justice advocacy, and celebrate Shabbat together for an event called Shabbat at the house. Here's what you can expect from your time together with us today. We are going to be singing together. If you'd like to learn or listen to the songs which we regularly sing here at the house, you'll find a playlist on the channel called Congregational Songs, which is our ever-growing electronic hymn book, if you will. We will be hearing from a family in Gaza and learning how we can support them. We will spend time in prayer and reflection, and we'll be exploring our story for the day called Reverence My Sanctuary, which is taken from Jeremiah chapter 7. So all that and more coming up this morning. For now, let's begin by singing our intro song, which is called No Liturgy. As we're coming together, this song serves as a reminder that God doesn't come close to us because of any form of liturgy, because of any form of manipulation, or because of any superstitious acts. Jesus has promised that where 2 or 3 gather together in his name, in his will, those who welcome his presence, his help, his wisdom, he will be there. Not because what they've said is magic words or that they've earned his favor, but because that's who he is. So let's sing together No Liturgy.
No liturgy can conjure up your presence. No words can bind your will to any man.
Author J.R.R. Tolkien wrote, "Deeds will not be less valiant because they are unpraised." We share this quote today for those of you who might be currently making right but difficult choices. Choices that are costing you, whether it is because you are living according to your values and your values are not appreciated or understood. Perhaps your decisions have recently led you down paths of loneliness, of conflict, struggle, uncertainty, doubt, or personal loss, whether they be financial or relational. And in those cases, particularly over time, one can be worn down from the complete lack of support from others. And in tandem with this, fear can creep in. A fear that says, what you're doing is pointless, it will amount to nothing, or you are not courageous because nobody sees you as such. Even when we make the right choices, discouragement can arise because so much of what we do, when we do what is right, goes either unnoticed in the world, or is taken for granted, or is maybe even punished in covert and overt ways, and it certainly can come at a high cost. So for those of you who are feeling this way today, let this tiny beam of light serve as a comfort for you in that darkness. That God is a just God, and He will vindicate you. He will vindicate you. The just acts, the kindness, the compassion, the integrity, the self-sacrifice that you choose do not go unseen, and they don't go unrecorded. Others may not currently praise or approve of you, but there is one who does. Remember Tolkien's quote, "Deeds will not be less valiant because they are unpraised." When you are courageous in love, your choices are not less lion-hearted because they are not met with applause. So keep on doing what is right, even when what you do is done in the dark. And on that note, it leads nicely into our next segment, which is called Image Bearers. Many of you already know, but sometimes here at the house we share examples of people who, in everyday life, in practical ways, are reflecting the image of God in the world. And today's example is a man called Mandla Mandela. Mandla Mandela is the tribal chief of the Maveso Traditional Council and is grandson to none other than the late Nelson Mandela. For years, Mandla, just like Nelson before him, has been supporting, shouting for, marching, protesting for the Free Palestine movement. He has led marches, boycotts, held public speeches and sit-ins, and most recently, Mandla joined the Sumud Flotilla, a group of ships carrying food sailing towards Gaza in an attempt to break the Israeli embargo and help the Palestinians who are being starved to death by their occupiers. The flotilla contained nearly 500 people from over 40 countries. On their journey, the Sumud Flotilla was bombed or set on fire no less than 7 times by the Israeli drones. But the flotilla pushed on, and just before they could reach Gaza's shores, the Israeli occupation intercepted them, violently boarded the boats, and at gunpoint kidnapped all nearly 500 civilians on board. All the food the Israelis dumped into the sea, including all the baby formula that could have saved hundreds of starved Palestinian infants. This interception was illegal according to international law, as the flotilla was attacked in international waters. The kidnapped flotilla members were then all taken to the notorious Israeli Ketziot torture prison in the Negev desert. Here they were kept in stark cells with bug-infested bedding, with access to no medication. The members were beaten, assaulted, many of them tortured, strip-searched, publicly humiliated, and denied access to lawyers and clean drinking water. Female Muslim members had their hijabs violently ripped off and were beaten. Another of the people on board was Greta Thunberg, a 22-year-old activist The Israelis beat her, dragged her around by her hair, forced her to crawl on all fours like a dog, forced her to kiss the Israeli flag, and then wrapped her in the Israeli flag and put her on public display for the Israeli public to come and humiliate and jeer at her. Now, Mandla is an incredible person. Consider this. Firstly, he knew that the Israeli colonial project is an inherently racist one. So he knew that he would likely be treated worse than the likes of Greta Thunberg and other white people on the flotilla. For years, the Israelis forced sterilized Ethiopian Jews among them to stop them from having children, as the Zionists do not view black or brown people as being pure Jewish people. In the past, other captured activists who were black or not white were treated many times worse than the white captives, as again the Israelis do not view black or brown people as human, and Mandla knew this was going on. Secondly, Mandla is, as we said, the grandson of Nelson Mandela. How many times growing up do you think that he heard of what his grandfather endured? How that image of long-term imprisonment, torture, and apartheid was burned into his mind. And still he went. Mandla still boarded that boat. Some said, "Why are you fighting so hard for people that are not your own, in a land not your own?" But Mandla understood, as Nelson did, that all oppression on this planet is connected, and borders are illusions, and that the Palestinians are our people. They are our family. And so he went anyway. Mandla was tortured in prison, and days later, due to international pressure, was finally released. He's already talking about sailing back. Thank you, Mandla, for your leadership, your modeling of what courage looks like. May we be greatly inspired by this example. Let us now pray together, and then we're going to share an example of how you can help some very real people in Gaza. Jesus, please let your kindness touch us today. We are inundated with so many things which harm us, which exhaust us, wear us down. Please give us rest from these things. Bring into our eye line better alternatives, because you don't wish us harm but healing. Despite all the overwhelm, preserve in our hearts a gentleness and love of things which are genuine and honorable, and grow in us a hunger for these things that we will chase after them and long to incorporate them in who we choose to be in the world. As we look at our Bible story today, let the words leap off the page and become very real and very affecting to us. May all who consent to it be moved and changed by your Spirit, the one you called the Comforter. And may each person here leave filled with good things. Amen. We are now going to be introduced to a family in Gaza. This is Lamis Ahmad.
Hello, I am Lamis from Gaza.
Lamis is a 27-year-old Palestinian woman living in Gaza. Her family used to consist of 6 people. The Israelis murdered half of her family, including her sister and her father. They are now down to 3, Lamis, her mother Nuf, and her 5-year-old little brother Momo. And every day they desperately try to stay alive inside a concentration camp. First, Lamis and her family were forced out of their home, which was bombed, and made to endlessly wander from place to place again and again and again. They lived in a tent, in squalor, terrified for their lives, as they were bombed, starved, and constantly displaced. Lamis would lie awake at night, afraid, unable to sleep because of how loud and close the bombing was. Momo became sick, a reaction to the immense stress of being hunted and the poison of the gassing and bombs which were dropping on them. His body reacted to the toxins and the stress, leading to his skin becoming covered in rashes and having breathing problems. The doctor they managed to see said that he needs antihistamines and skin treatment urgently, but Lemise couldn't afford the medication and Momo has only been getting sicker. One day, as this 5-year-old boy lay in his tent, he began crying and asked Lemise if he was going to die. She told me, how on earth am I supposed to answer him? A bomb then fell so close to their tent that Noof was injured in her foot. The injury is bad and she needs surgery if she wishes to keep her leg. Imagine trying to flee death on foot while only having one leg, and they can't afford the surgery. Then a few weeks ago, in the middle of the night, the family was told that the Israelis were coming, burning and shooting everything on sight. And so they had to get up and flee during the night. They couldn't carry their tent. They couldn't bring most of their belongings. They left with next to nothing. And so now they are without shelter, without blankets. Momo is sick, Noof is injured, and the cold is coming. The three of them are literally sleeping on the street. No protection, no heat, no shelter. Soon the rainy season will come to Gaza. Each night they shiver from the cold and wonder whether this night will be the night that they freeze to death. Now is the opportunity for you to save 3 real human lives. Not the theory of faith, not the abstract of the gospel, but where it becomes real. These 3 human beings who are made in the image of God, these 3 people who are loved and seen by Jesus, you can help Lemise, Noof, and Momo today. This is the GoFundMe fundraiser that I created for them. All the money goes directly to Lemise, and better still, you can send money directly to Lemise's PayPal, which actually makes the money get there quicker. I know that in the ocean of pain that is Palestine, it's easy to turn away and say, what can I do? But you don't have to hold back the ocean. Just pick one person, pick one family and help them. If you were that one person and you were helped by anyone in that situation, wouldn't that be the difference between life and death? Wouldn't that mean the world to you? Don't let the Palestinian people be whittled down to mere numbers in our minds. Focus on someone and help them. If you can, donate anything you have. It doesn't have to be big amounts. Those leftover pennies, that cash that you would otherwise use for trivial things, use the money that you were going to spend on takeaway this week. Skip the chocolate this weekend and donate instead. These are real people who need our help. They are our brothers and sisters, and the only thing which separates us in this world is chance. I'm going to leave this information here on the screen so you can go ahead and donate straight away while we sing together before diving into our story for today. We're now going to sing this song together called We Open Our Bibles Again. And I would urge you and ask you, please donate whatever you can.
Suffering Job, the faithfulness of God to covenant. So we open our Bibles again. There is transforming power in hearing the story. Trust comes by hearing the word about the Christ. So we open our Bibles again. A worldview is given through revelation's voice, is revealed by the Father of all truth. And the thread which is running through human history, the testimony of two witnesses. So we open our Bibles again. There is transforming power in hearing the story. Trust comes by hearing the word about the Christ. So we open our Bibles again. When we hear of Jesus, the living word in flesh, then his spirit will change our hearts and eyes. And the law and the prophets, they pointed all to him. And we are part of this great narrative. So we open our Bibles again. There is transforming power in hearing the story. Trust comes by hearing the word about the Christ. So we open our Bibles. We open our Bibles. So we open our Bibles again.
Our story today is found in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 7. And just so we're all on the same page, the context for the scene we're about to read is set in Jerusalem in the early 1600s BC. Over the land of Judah, of which Jerusalem is the capital city, the young King Jehoiakim is in the early days of his reign. Peace seems to cover the land. All is business as usual. Morning comes, the gates of the capital city are opened, and Jerusalem is soon bustling with the daily sounds of carts, bleeding animals, sellers in the marketplace calling out their prices, children laughing and mothers calling. The people of Judah stream in and out of the city gates. Many have come there on business, and others have come to climb Mount Moriah, atop which sits the Jerusalem temple. The temple of Elohim, erected by King Solomon 3.5 centuries earlier. Now the gleaming white and gold structure towers over the city, every gilded surface catching the morning light, and from afar it appears like a twinkling jewel atop the hill. As the sun rises higher, its snow-white face will soon appear so dazzling that passers-by are compelled to avert their eyes. This building is the center of religious practice, life, and meaning to the Yahweh-worshipping people of Judah. Inside the temple, visitors will sacrifice animals for themselves and their family's sins. They will pray, they will sing, they will worship, they will pay their coins into the donation and tax boxes, they will seek the guidance of the temple priests. As we said, all is business as usual. There is peace in the city and peace in the temple, as it should be, for this is a place of worship. This is the place in which God dwells, his sanctuary. And if there's one thing one must do about the sanctuary of God, it is to reverence it. The day may have begun on a peaceful note, but the peace in the house of God is about to be interrupted. This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Stand at the gate of the Lord's house, and there proclaim this message. Hear the word of the Lord, all you people of Judah, who come through these gates to worship the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Reform your ways and your actions, and I will let you live in this place. Do not trust in deceptive words and say, this is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. Among the sea of people moving in and out of the temple gate, one figure makes his way to the entrance and, raising his voice above the crowd, begins addressing all the temple visitors. The man's name is Jeremiah. He is a prophet of God, called at the mere age of 16, and he is a curse and a bane in the glorious city of Jerusalem. Because for the past 18 years, this thorn in the side of the people has become a source of gloom in their everyday lives, a stormy cloud in their otherwise bright blue skies. Jeremiah, the doom's prophet, Mr. Downer himself, the prophet who sees only problems, the man who weeps when others celebrate, the prophet who complains about every little thing the people do, the prophet who speaks of destruction and calamity soon coming over Jerusalem, the prophet who interrupts parties and disrespects kings and priests. And of course, some of the people passing by sigh knowingly. Of course he would ruin a perfect morning such as this one. And what does this troublemaker have to say? This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Reform your ways and your actions, and I will let you live in this place. Do not trust in deceptive words and say, this is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. You can almost hear the groans in the crowd. You can almost sense the collective grunting. But the troublemaking prophet isn't done with his speech yet. Verse 5. If you really change your ways and your actions and deal with each other justly, if you do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not follow other gods to your own harm, then I will let you live in this place, in the land I gave your ancestors forever and ever. But look, you are trusting in deceptive words that are worthless. Will you steal and murder, commit adultery and perjury, burn incense to Baal, and follow other gods you have not known, and then come and stand before me in this house which bears my name and say, we are safe to do all these detestable things? Has this house which bears my name become a den of robbers to you? But I have been watching declares the Lord." Jeremiah's message to the temple-going crowd that day began to get real specific. Not just general, reform your ways and behave well. He is listing the specific things which people are failing to do and other things which they are doing which they ought not to do. And God's words conclude with that if you continue to do these things, you will be removed from this place. And that continues in verse 12. "Go now to the place in Shiloh, where I first made a dwelling for my name, and see what I did to it, because of the wickedness of my people Israel. While you were doing all these things, declares the Lord, I spoke to you again and again, but you did not listen. I called you, but you did not answer. Therefore what I did to Shiloh, I will now do to the house that bears my name, the temple you trust in, the place I gave to you and your ancestors. I will thrust you from my presence, just as I did all your fellow Israelites, the people of Ephraim." So to understand what is being said here, when God first came down to live among his people, the Israelites, in the Sinai desert in the days of Moses, he did so in a specific tent called the tabernacle, meaning, in Hebrew, dwelling place. The people were instructed to treat this particular tent, the tabernacle, and this service attached to it with complete reverence. God said, "Observe my Sabbaths and have reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord." Leviticus 19:30. So the Israelites travel from Egypt through the Sinai desert and eventually settle in the land of Canaan. And a place called Shiloh becomes the chosen place where God's tabernacle, his tent, stands permanently. You can read about this in Joshua 18:1. Everybody knew that Shiloh was where God's presence was. Shiloh was the holy place generations before Jerusalem ever was. But in the coming years, the people of Israel consistently chose violence and injustice in their society. They sacrificed to other gods, to idols. The priests serving in the tabernacle service abused their power, and the dwelling place of God was repeatedly treated with immense disrespect, manipulation, and profanity. The command, spoken years ago in the days of Moses, "Have reverence for my sanctuary," was trampled underfoot. And so after years of warning, God eventually leaves his tabernacle for a while. He abandoned the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent where he dwelt among humankind. He sent the ark of his might into captivity, his splendor into the hands of the enemy. He gave his people over to the sword. He was furious with his inheritance. Psalm 78, 60-64. So Shiloh and the people there meet judgment and ruin for their choices, because after all, if there's one thing one must do about the sanctuary of God, it is to reverence it. Now a few years go by, and eventually the Israelites demand to have a king of their own. And the second king of Israel, called David, son of Jesse, brings the tabernacle tent from Shiloh and relocates it to Jerusalem, which becomes the capital city of his kingdom. King David decides that he wants to honor God by building a temple for him to live in. But it is his son, King Solomon, who is the one to build and complete this temple. God's presence moves from the tabernacle tent to the Jerusalem temple, which becomes his now dwelling place. King David grows old and dies, Solomon too. Generations go by, and the people continue in their corruption. The kingdom is split into two, into the kingdom of Judah to the south, with Jerusalem as its capital, and the kingdom of Israel to the north, with Samaria as its capital. The people of the kingdom of Israel sinned so horrendously that between 721 and 722 BC, God exiles Israel. Its people are taken captive by the Assyrians and scattered throughout the surrounding lands. Now, the kingdom of Judah still remains, but God likens Judah to being a younger sister of Israel, following in her footsteps, making the same choices. The people of Judah for many years descend into deep sin and corruption. In response, God spends those years attempting to reason with, trying to call back his people from the self-destructive darkness which their society has plunged itself into. He sends judge after judge, prophet after prophet, messenger after messenger, with the message urging the people to change. And in our story, as Jeremiah now stands speaking to, pleading with the people of Judah, it is 95 years after the fall of Israel. And God is now saying, go to Shiloh and look at its ruins. See what I did there. Remember what I did to Israel. You are on the same path. If you don't wish to end up with a similar fate to them, you must change. You must reform. And it is at this point that you can almost hear the protests. But God, but Jeremiah, you are literally standing at the entrance to God's temple, to his house, watching as we, the people, are on our way to, or have already been to the temple to worship. Don't you see we're all going to the temple? Can't you see we're already doing what you're telling us to? We're worshipping. We're sacrificing. We're seeking forgiveness for our sins. We're filling the temple coffers with coins and the temple courts with prayer and song. Surely we are doing what God asks and serving him. We are here, aren't we? We're worshipping, we're keeping the law. Why are you comparing us, then, to the people of Shiloh and Israel? We are not like them. This is Jerusalem. This is God's chosen people. And at the very center of it, this is the temple of the Lord. To some listening to Jeremiah, it might have seemed to them like he was a man standing at the entrance of a hospital and telling the patients entering the hospital that they need to seek urgent medical help. Yes, thank you, that's what we're here doing. But it would seem that God defines disobedience, defines corruption, and defines true allegiance to him in a different way than the people do. Because they think they're fine. Why do they think this? Because they're going to the temple. Remember, verse 10, they come and stand before me in this house, which bears my name, and say, we are safe. Why do they think they're fine and they're safe? Because they are in the temple of the Lord. But did you notice how God defined the people's corruption? Was it by saying, you aren't giving me enough sacrifices? No. Was it, you aren't attending the temple services enough? No. Was it, you are not giving enough coins to the temple offerings? No. Was it, you are not producing enough feelings of faith? No. When God says, reform your ways and your actions, and change your ways and your actions, what is he talking about here? What does he want the people to change? What needs reforming? Well, he lists them out. Number 1, deal with each other justly. Number 2, stop oppressing the foreigner. Number 3, stop oppressing the fatherless and the widow. Number 4, stop shedding innocent blood in this place. Number 5, Stop following other gods to your own harm. What have the people been doing? They have been stealing, murdering, committing adultery, committing perjury or swearing by false gods, burning incense, meaning praying to Baal, and following other gods they have not known. And then after doing all these things, what do the people do? Verse 2, hear the word of the Lord, all you people of Judah, who come through these gates to worship the Lord. Notice two things here. It is all you people of Judah. God's addressing everyone with this message. It's not this particular sermon is not for me. And they are described as coming through the temple gates to worship the Lord. They are temple goers. They are worshippers. They do all these things, mistreat foreigners, oppressing widows and orphans, not dealing justly with each other, and then they stream into the temple, and then come and stand before me in this house, which bears my name, and say, we are safe to do all these detestable things. Now we begin to gain a clearer picture of what's happening here. Beneath the surface of all those devoted, temple-going people, all those tithe-paying, prayer-saying, worship-performing, song-singing people, is a society that is saturated with social injustice. That is what this God is saying his people must reform and completely change. That is what this God departed from in Shiloh and in Israel. That is how this God is defining corruption, worthless, false religion, and betrayal of faith in him. Notice the focus on this list. The foreigner, the orphan, the widow, the vulnerable, the victim of violence, the marginalized and vulnerable in society, those who are forgotten, mistreated, exploited, taken advantage of, seen as less important, seen as sacrificable, expendable. The orphan, the children without adults who take responsibility for their care and protection. The widow, who in this society where women are made dependent on males for protection, housing and food, is condemned to a life of poverty, slow starvation, or else prostitution, if that society does not take ownership of her needs. Entitlement, stealing, taking things which are not yours, murdering, violence, the devaluing of lives. And then coming into the house of God and performing all the right steps, saying all the right words, all the points of the law, all that the Torah requires, being good temple goers, and concluding, therefore, we are safe to do all these detestable things. We are safe because we go to the temple. We are fine. We are blameless. We are the people of God because we have the temple and we worship there. But God concludes, has this house which bears my name become a den of robbers to you? But I have been watching, declares the Lord. When I was in primary school, between the ages of 7 and 10, we attended a congregation in the city of Bergen in Norway. And the location where this congregation met and held its services was in quite a pleasant building. First of all, the building sat atop a hill. I remember this because, as fun as taking my sled and zooming down the snowy street all the way from the church parking lot and down to the main road at the bottom achieved furious speeds and was completely forbidden, it was also an exhausting trek walking the very steep way back up. The building looked a little bit like the front of a Viking ship, a triangle with a steep rise to a peak that reached heavenward. Inside, you'd find the main meeting hall upstairs, usually called by most churches as the sanctuary. And inside the sanctuary, you'd see a tall A-frame ceiling with sloped wooden beams, again looking a bit like the inside of a huge ship. And at the front of the sanctuary, behind the pulpit, the entire wall was made of not wood or brick, but of huge panels of glass. So during the church services, you'd be looking out at this stunning view. Clouds, birds, mountains, the city below, the sea in the distance. And if you were down in the city and glimpsed the church up there, and the sun caught the front glass of the church just right, it almost looked like a dazzling jewel on a hill. Now, while we lived there, a certain point of discussion arose among the church body, and that issue was the changing of the church carpet. The flooring of the sanctuary was entirely covered in wall-to-wall carpet, a carpet which had gotten a bit worn and old over the years. So during one of the church board meetings in Bergen, it was suggested that the church undergo a bit of a facelift and get a new carpet for this sanctuary. The intention was presented to the congregation during a church business meeting, and the question included, what shall the colour of the new carpet be? As soon as that question hit the floor, the debate erupted like bees from a disturbed hive. And as a child, I remember sitting watching the pastor's face grow more and more pale, because even as the question left his lips and the congregation descended into sounds that I can only liken to noises you'd hear at a zoo, he knew he'd made an error. It began with one brother insisting that the carpet be of a blander colour than the current one, so as not to distract the youth from the weekly sermons and not lead them into thoughts of sinful lust or distraction. At this, a mother spoke up and insisted that her son had no such lustful thoughts and called the brother old-fashioned and delusional. A sister from the back interrupted and demanded that the carpet be red, for what other colour could be so suitable as red to welcome the royalty of the King of Heaven to be with us each week? Another brother quickly scoffed at her idea and said that this indicated true shallowness. "Our church won't look like Hollywood," he shouted, "and surely it must be blue, to reflect some of the colouring inside the tabernacle tent's original walls." But he was quickly corrected by an elder and lambasted for misquoting scripture when it was in fact acacia wood and not blue which lined the walls of the tabernacle. No, insisted a deacon in return. There was, in fact, if you'd read your Bible correctly, thank you very much, fabric of scarlet, purple, white, and blue, and so either of those colours would do nicely. "Surely walls are not floors," piped in one of the younger members. One of the older children stood up and pointed out that this building was in fact not the tabernacle tent in the Bible, and so why was everyone bringing that up at all? But she was quickly shouted down by the adults. Within minutes, the business meeting had descended into utter chaos. Shouting voices, furious Bible page flipping, and the rest of the points on the agenda had to be tabled for another time. Now, the pastor in Bergen may have thought that everyone just needed to cool off, and this issue would be solved at the next business meeting. But oh, how mistaken he was. Because the next meeting was hijacked by the carpet colour again. And soon, it wasn't just the business meetings which were being derailed anymore. It seeped into Sabbath school classes. Apparently, carpet colours were central in Daniel chapter 8's prophecies. And talk of the carpet dominated pastoral visits and seeped into sermons and shouting matches in the hallways and gossiping in the men's bathrooms and debates at potlucks over bowls of bland Norwegian potatoes and angrily homemade hummus. Rifts formed in the congregation, relationships on the brink, sides were created, friendships broken, teams and alliances formed, each approaching the pastor to seek to persuade him to choose their color of carpet, the right color. After months of this madness, the pastor finally had to announce that the matter of the sanctuary carpet would be tabled for now and brought up at a later date. And I remember distinctly how in that last business meeting, the pastor sighed disappointedly, and as he looked out over the congregation, he said, "Imagine how much we could have served our community with the time we spent squabbling about the color of a carpet." Now, over the years, I have attended, sat on and chaired several church boards, elder boards, and church committees. And two things I learned from those experiences were, number one, nothing gets church people more hot under the collar, more involved or more fired up than when there are discussions about the church building. And number two, the more a church focuses on its building, guaranteed the less it focuses on the people inside and its surrounding community. It works like this every time. The more focused on the building people are, the less their focus is on relationships, community, and social justice issues. Every time, without fail. In fact, it works so well that it's a way to tell the temperature of a congregation. See how much they invest in, focus on, and talk about the building. The inside, the outside, the furniture, the decoration, the maintenance of the building. There are church boards that have spent 5 years talking about and executing building renovations, and in those years have not had the treatment of women on their board meeting agenda a single time, not once, or the addressing and rooting out of spiritual abuse among its leadership, not once, or aggressively educating the congregation on anti-racism, not once. If you've ever experienced being in such a meeting, you will know this obsession with the church building can be all-consuming and excessive, consuming of time, energy, debate, and resources. I've seen churches almost go bankrupt because they insisted on extending the building, or moving to a new building, the redesign of the kitchen, the expansion of the meeting hall, the painting of the walls, the organizing of the parking lot, the coloring of the drapes, the design of the windows, the artwork, the benches, the seating, the lighting. And change is sometimes treated as disaster by some and necessary for the survival of others. People become terribly protective of their church building. But, some may say, isn't that appropriate? After all, if there's one thing one must do about the sanctuary of God, it is to reverence it. But the focus on church buildings goes far beyond the mere aesthetics. Were you ever a child in church and you were shushed furiously by an elder or a deacon or an adult for running in the sanctuary? Told off for laughing too loudly with your friends in the sanctuary, or acting in a way deemed less than suitable for a church sanctuary? Church sanctuaries are thought of and treated by many Christians as special places. In fact, it is very common in Adventist churches, and other churches as well, to feature a plaque of writing at the front or the back of the church. And that writing reads, "Reverence my sanctuary." Quoting, of course, what we read earlier in Leviticus 19:30, and which is also repeated in Leviticus 26:2, "Observe my Sabbaths and have reverence for my sanctuary." Or, as it is phrased in the King James Version, "Reverence my sanctuary." All over the world, you will find this verse quoted and displayed in Adventist churches, in Baptist churches, in Anglican churches. Reverence my sanctuary. Reverence my sanctuary. The reasoning behind displaying these words is to serve as a reminder for those coming through its doors to show respect and awe for God's holy place, to behave with quiet devotion and deep respect. Because after all, if there's one thing one must do about the sanctuary of God, it is to reverence it. Right? Except those places aren't the sanctuary of God, are they? Only at very specific times and in very specific contexts in history is there any record of God choosing one place to dwell, to live. One was in the tent in the Sinai desert, which later rested at Shiloh, but he left there. One was in the Jerusalem temple, but not many years after Jeremiah's speech at the temple gate, he left there too. Another one was when God himself returned to the land of Judah, to the city of Jerusalem, in flesh and blood, and he was murdered by the people in that city. Jesus, who said to the Samaritan woman at the well, "Believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the Spirit and in truth. The time has now come." Jesus came and said, "I do not dwell in one city or another." True worshippers do not have to go to this mountain, or to this hill, or to this city, or this building, or this temple to worship me, to worship my Father in heaven, to pray to him, to seek him, to live with him. They worship by aligning themselves with the Spirit of God and with the things which are truth, the truth. Believers in Jesus spread out from Jerusalem to all over the world. And what does God have to say to his believers? 1 Corinthians 3:16, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, and that God's Spirit lives in you?" You are God's temple. When you follow Jesus Christ, when you align yourself with his ways, his spirit, his heart, and by doing so chase after truth and justice, what he taught us and how he lived, you become God's temple. We are God's dwelling place. Every person who welcomes him, his company, his presence, you are God's temples, people. And in John, Jesus says, "If anyone loves me, they will keep my word. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them." How many times have we sat in religious services and heard a sermon or watched a short animation video about how the church is not the building, the church is not the building, the church is the people? How many times have you and I heard this said over and over? But it's like it doesn't sink in for some people. It's like it doesn't connect with reality. Because we continue to call the building a church. We continue to think of the building as the church. In fact, we can't imagine a church without the building. We continue to call the meeting place inside these buildings as what? As the sanctuary. As God's sanctuary. Taken from the word used for where God lived in the tabernacle tent and in the Jerusalem temple. No building today can rightfully call one of its rooms God's sanctuary. Think about it. It has no such right. This goes against the teaching of Jesus and the Word of God. In fact, there is no biblical basis for this theology. And I find it shocking that a group such as the Adventists, who have had a near obsessive relationship to the sanctuary and the sanctuary service, have failed to grasp this very simple truth. That this theology of calling meeting places and buildings churches, or the meeting place the sanctuary, is downright unbiblical, is absolutely unfounded in any sound or right theology. It is a wrong, erroneous teaching. It is a false equivalence to compare a religious building today with the biblical sanctuary. But it's a teaching which permeates our thinking and our language. The building isn't the church. Any group or community of believers in Jesus are a church. The building isn't the temple of God. The person who trusts in Jesus is his temple. One room inside a man-built building isn't a sanctuary. People's hearts, human beings, are. And now we begin to see. Now we begin to understand what God was saying through Jeremiah all those years ago. All you people who are streaming into this building every day, every week, think you are worshiping and honoring God because you come to his temple, this jewel on the hill. But really, you spend all your lives outside this building, dishonoring, failing to care for, failing to protect, abusing, exploiting, ignoring, murdering, desecrating his temples, namely people, human beings. True worship lies not in crossing the threshold of this temple, but in acting justly, in treating each other justly. And it's deeply ironic and actually quite chilling when you think about it. All those religious buildings today, displaying in large and bold letters, "Reverence my sanctuary," so we shush the children and argue about the color of the carpet and carefully maintain and protect the walls and ceiling and carpet, while the congregation continues mistreating the people inside and outside that building, God's true temples, the places where he dwells. The foreigners, the widows, the betrayed, the poor, the refugees, the children, the victims of racism, the girls and women, the parentless, the disabled, the marginalized, the slave, the outsider. When religious people talk about reverencing God's sanctuary, and they say this when referring to a building or a room, I am floored by it. Not only this complete heresy, but by the sacrilege of it. God doesn't dwell in your buildings. He isn't contained in your so-called church. Your meeting hall isn't especially hallowed, its walls dripping with holy juice and its carpet glowing with divine specialness. The deep, deep irony. Churches that focus on their buildings tend to overlook or mistreat its people. The people who are the true living, walking, breathing, dwelling places of God. They are his sanctuaries. And you have desecrated them. And there's nothing new about the idolatry of building worship. We read about it here in Jeremiah. And in fact, when you look at the greater biblical narrative, and when you look at the stories of white Western Christianity, you discover that it has always been indicative of the religious corrupt, of those misaligned with God's will and word, to obsess and focus on buildings over people. The upkeep of buildings over the care of the poor, the maintenance of churches over learning how to treat people right, the obsession with beautifying religious spaces over honoring women. Think about it. The religious leaders at the time of Jesus had this sort of thinking as well. They were obsessed with the temple because it was the seat of their power. When Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin talk about Jesus being a threat to them, they specifically bring up, if we allow Jesus to continue, the Romans will come and take away our temple. They are more interested in the building than in what is true or just or right. You will find that the most corrupt, the most disconnected religious people, disconnected from social justice issues, from what is taking place in their society, in their homes, in their families, they tend to be mega churches or to have ambitions in that direction, to grow in space and numbers. So-called churches that have the biggest buildings, the biggest budgets, the biggest amount of staff members, the most beautiful meeting halls. It is always the nicest church buildings which house the least faithful disciples. There you will find corruption. Where the money flows, but justice is stagnant. Where the footprint of the building moves, but the Spirit of God does not. And it was the same during the pre-exilic days. Prophet after prophet, Amos, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Micah came along and talked about how the people were corrupt because they were not taking care of the vulnerable in their world. Meanwhile, they obsessed at certain time periods about the upkeep of the temple, about the upkeep of Jerusalem, the holy city. You can look back in the days of when the Catholic Church would bleed the already poor citizenry and churchgoers of their few precious coins, manipulating them with the threat of punishment and hell to give and give and give to the church while their children starved so that they could build grand cathedrals with magnificent stained glass windows to glorify bishops and to honor the Pope and Rome. And the citizenry gave because they thought it was for the glory of God, that it was God's will. This has always been the way. Always. The glorification and focus on geographical places and buildings has always been the human behavior of those who are not aligned with the will of God. This was the heart of the message God gave Jeremiah to announce to the people that day. You all think you're fine, but you're not, because you have forsaken treating human beings justly. You are filled with indifference, with apathy, with violence, corruption, exploitation, and oppression. And you think this building will wash you clean. You think this building will make you safe, that once you cross its threshold, you are absolved. But it won't keep you safe, because you have abandoned social justice. The true worship lies in how we treat other people. The Israelites, the people of Shiloh, the people of Judah, the religious leaders in Jesus' day, and the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages, and Adventists today, in hallowed buildings, all together they say, "This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. This is the church of the Lord." Notice the repetition, communicating how the temple, the building, is what is in focus. But about this thinking, God says, do not trust in deceptive words. He calls this revering of the building deceptive. Do not be deceived. Do not delude yourselves. This building is nothing. The temple of the Lord is the child in Gaza concentration camp in Palestine. The temple of the Lord is the woman in the mining pit in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The temple of the Lord is the girl you lust after on your screen. The temple of the Lord is the poor immigrant your government is persecuting. For God is the living God, not contained in a room or a building or a tent. He is the God of the living, and He is dwelling in and with those you have neglected and betrayed. Through your silence, your complicity, your apathy, your greed, your violence, your sense of entitlement, your lack of active compassion. And what does God say? But I have been watching, declares the Lord. He has been watching what we do and say outside the temple grounds, outside the church building. After the songs die down and the prayers are over, when you go home, when you enter the marketplace, when we surf the internet, when you interact with your wife, how you treat your subordinates at work, how you speak to your secretary, how you view suffering and do nothing to help. Can you imagine what would happen if you and I treated people the way we treat our buildings? If, when we entered their space, when we crossed their threshold, we entered with the same careful, reverent mindset as when we enter our so-called sanctuaries? If we were mindful of how we affected their mental health, their emotional safety, if we were careful with how we used or wasted their time, if we truly shifted our focus from thinking of the buildings as the church to seeing human beings as the church, how might we cherish them? Do you consider that when you step into the world of another person, that is holy ground? That God lives there? What if we treated those people with the same care, the same maintenance, the same protection? What if we invested in them, spent time and money on them, built them up, expanded their resources and space, trembled at their specialness, invested in their dignity, honored their beauty, put ourselves on the line to keep them safe, defended, venerated their hearts and minds, celebrated them, delighted in them? What if, when you and I stepped into a religious building and we see that writing up there on the wall, "Reverence my sanctuary"? What if we made a shift in our brains and we took that to mean the living beings, the warm bodies sitting around us? Not the dead, cold stone surrounding us, but the people outside these four walls. What would that look like? And how does that stand in contrast with how we're currently treating the living, walking sanctuaries, the temples of the Lord? The temples of the Lord. The temples of the Lord. Be warned and listen to the words echoing through the centuries, riding on the voice of Jeremiah. Reform your ways and your actions. Change your ways and your actions. How? Deal with each other justly. That is how you honor his sanctuary. Otherwise, God says, I will thrust you from my presence, just as I did all your fellow Israelites, the people of Ephraim. True worship lies in treating other people justly, and failing to do so is a desecration of God's temple. After all, if there's one thing one must do about the sanctuary of God, it is to reverence it. Let's conclude this thought by singing together the Beatitudes.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom's yours. Blessed are the ones who mourn, for they will all be comforted. Blessed Blessed are the meek, for their inheritance is earth. Blessed are the ones who thirst for justice, for they will be filled. What a great reward for disciples of the Lord. The insulted and the weak are not unseen. Come, rejoice, be glad, for your future hope is safe, and the champion of your faith has called you blessed. Blessed are the merciful, for mercy will be shown. Blessed are the pure in heart, their eyes will soon behold their God. Blessed are the makers of the peace, you sons of God. Blessed are the persecuted for the cause of Jesus. What a great reward for disciples of the Lord. The insulted and the weak are not unseen. Come, rejoice, be glad, for your future hope is safe, and the champion of your faith has called you blessed. Blessed are the ones who suffer for the sake of love. Didn't they oppress the prophets that have gone before you? Blessed are the ones who seem to lose, for they have won. You will have the greatest prize, the presence of the living God. What a great reward for disciples of the Lord. The insulted and the weak are not unseen. Come, rejoice, be glad, for your future hope is safe, and the champion of your faith has called you blessed. Come, rejoice, be glad, for your future hope is safe, and the champion of your faith has called you blessed.
Let us now say together, may we reverence the living sanctuaries of God, the human beings around us. May we see holy ground in them, and may we worship the living God by treating them justly. Thank you all so much for joining us today. The links where you can donate to Lamise is in the description box below, Please also share those links on your social media accounts to increase their reach. And let's reach a hand through the bars of their prison to help them. May God bless you, and we'll see you soon again.
Come rejoice.